Hello and welcome back to How I Got on Broadway. Today we are joined by producer, stage manager, and educator Cody Renard Richard. How are you doing today, Cody?
I'm so good. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for being
Of
here.
course.
All right. We're going to go right into it.
Okay.
We're going to start out very simple.
Okay.
Can you please give us your definition of a stage manager?
My definition of a stage manager varies. I would say we're the person who keeps the train moving. We deal with almost every aspect of the production. We coordinate with the directors, the choreographers, the designers, the cast, the producers. We're kind of like the centerpiece of a Ferris wheel. So without that axis point, the Ferris wheel can't turn. So that's like the easiest definition, I would say.
Okay. I think that's a perfect definition.
Okay.
So what made you want to be a stage manager and how did you get into it?
My high school theater teacher sort of pushed me into it. I was a troubled kid, if you will. I was always, I was a class clown. I was always in detention. And my high school guidance counselor made me join the theater, the drama club. And when I got in there, I was acting, sort of. I did 2 plays, and my teacher encouraged me to be the stage manager. She told me I had a way of making people listen without yelling. And at 14, all I heard was I got to be in charge. So I was like, sign me up. So I started stage managing all the shows in high school, and I fell in love with the responsibility of it. And I sort of was like her right-hand person. I found the props. I was her assistant director, and I really liked being that person that everybody came to. So I stage managed every production in high school from that point on. And then my high school teacher, Carrie Wood, shout out to her. She's amazing. She encouraged me to go to college for it. In fact, she drove me around to different universities to interview. So she's the reason why I went to school for this. And then I went to college, and then the rest was history.
History indeed.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I read your op-ed from dramatics.org called Dare to Dream, where you have this quote where you say, "I commit to making space for others as I continue to take space for myself." Can you talk a little more about what your journey has looked like, having to advocate for yourself in this space and still taking the time to be a voice for others, especially as a stage manager?
Yeah, I haven't thought of that piece in a while. I think it's important that, that first we can step into a space and fill the space with who we are. I think for so long, at least a part of my journey, I've been asked to mold myself into certain places to sort of, fit into what the demographic or atmosphere is. And that feels icky at times. So I think once I got a better grasp of who I was and who I wanted to be as a leader, I was able to step into more spaces freely, I guess. And going through that for myself, I think it's important for other people to not have to feel that. So for me, my whole journey after recognizing that was really being able to take space and places and then offer that for other people, which is why I started the scholarship program, and which is why, when I hire people on teams, I generally bring in at least 1 or 2 new people to give them the opportunity to be in these spaces, because not everyone has access to Broadway or to some of the things that I do. And I found it in a way that was, non-traditional. So to give that to other people has been, one of the things that I really try to do.
Yeah, and being able to think about others in that way as you're still on your come up, like having that idea way back when, I think is so important. And I think stage management is an extremely demanding job. It really takes a certain kind of person to be a good stage manager.
Yes, for sure.
And we'll talk more about it. For you, what would you say are the essential qualities of a good stage manager?
So many. I would say I like people who are people-oriented. I think a quality that a lot of people don't possess is knowing how to read a room. And if you're focused on people, you can sort of feel the energy of like what the space needs. So if I come in at a 10 and the room is at a 5, I need to adjust how I am so the room can still function as it is. Like I don't ever want to come into a space and change the dynamic if something is already functioning right. So I think our jobs as leaders and as stage managers is to really understand what the space needs. So we have to be malleable, we have to be flexible, we have to be able to kind of, dissect what each individual needs. And that goes with communication, because the way I speak to you is going to be very different than the way I speak to Audra McDonald. Or the way I talk to Audra is going to be very different than how I talk to Andre DeShields or Jasmine Rogers, So I think that really understanding the human and figuring out how they like to be communicated with, and also infusing your style into that, but figuring out what that relationship is a huge part of what we do. I think positive leaders are very helpful in spaces because you can lead by example and kind of set the tone. I think people who are selfless in a way and want to work on a team and really show that care, that there's a team atmosphere, are people that I find that folks gravitate to and really admire. So those are some of the qualities I think of, along with being able to understand the technical aspects and being detail oriented and having all the other hard skills. I focus mainly on soft skills when I interview people, just because if I'm interviewing you, you already have the hard skills. I've already checked your resume, you've done the job. So I want to know like how we vibe and like what those soft skills are. So those would be the things that I would say, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So as a production stage manager, I believe the first Broadway show you were a PSM for was Freestyle Love Supreme. What was it like for you finally getting to step into that kind of a leadership position?
Crazy. So I had, I was on Hamilton previously before that, and I was the assistant stage manager on it, and I was on a short-term contract. And they had actually offered me to stay on full-time. And at that moment in my career, I was like, I need to stop assisting. Because people kept coming to me and was like, you should be the PSM. And for whatever reason, like, not of that show, but like, you should be PSMing. And that's something that I've always wanted to do, but, being in my 20s at the time, maybe I was 30. No, I was in my 20s at the time. It's hard to step into a new space. General managers think you're too young. Some directors think you don't have the experience. So in order to get that, it's very hard because you can't do the thing unless you've done the thing, which is, a hard cycle to break. So for me, I took I went out on a limb and I turned down the full-time gig, and everything I did beyond that was like, I have to focus on PSMing. I have to put that next to my name so people can see that I can do it, so then I can do it. So I turned down, I think, 3 or 4 Broadway shows after that just so I can like start PSMing. And I did a show off Broadway, I did a show at the Muni. So I just started doing these things, and I was posting about and just talking about that this is what I'm doing now. So I was out at Williamstown doing Olympika, which eventually came to Broadway. We were doing the out of town of that. And I met with these general managers who were looking to bring Olympika into Broadway, and we were just talking, and I was telling them my dreams and like what I wanted to do, which is also very important that you always speak the things that you want, because that's how it comes back to you, and also if you don't tell people what you want, then how are you going to get it? Exactly. So I was just talking to them about the things that I wanted to do, and then a year later I got a random call saying that Freestyle Love Supreme was going off Broadway and if I would be interested, and I had already signed on to do something else. But this opportunity was with Lynn, it was with Chris Jackson and James Iglehart and people that I knew. And I didn't know that it was going to move to Broadway, but I was like, I need to be in this room with these people doing this job so they can see me in this way so I can continue to build on where I want to go. So for long story short, I got the gig. I did it off Broadway, and it was the craziest experience. It's an improv show. I don't know if you know the show. It's an improv show. It's not structured. Chris and Lynn and James and Utkarsh, who was in it, and Anthony, who was in it, are all big personalities and very, different humans. And like, they've never done a run of the show, and they've never done a structured performance of the show consecutively. So being able to figure that out with them was a huge learning curve. And it was a blessing in disguise, because then that show moved to Broadway, and ultimately they brought me on, and I helped them, figure that out. So long story short, it was an incredible experience. I learned a lot in terms of communication and in terms of adaptability and being flexible, because it was a non-traditional show, but it was the thing that sort of like kick-started my journey as PSMing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you talked a little about turning down jobs, kind of planning out what you wanted to do. Can you talk about the process of building out a stage management team? Because I think this is something that still feels pretty elusive to me, and I work in this industry. So I'd love to hear about how a PSM gets attached to a project and where it goes from there to get a full team.
Yeah, it varies per person and on like where you are in your journey. For me, if I'm being quite frank, now I get called about shows. I'm very fortunate that I've been doing this long enough and that people reach out to me, and I'm very blessed about that. So I interview sometimes as well, so it just depends on what the project is. And then, beyond that, building the team, I try to hire for the show itself. Typically, if you're doing a musical, you have 3 stage managers. So you have the PSM, then you have the first assistant, and then the second assistant. And for me, the first assistant is always someone who I've worked with previously or someone who I've had a relationship with, just because that relationship is so tight. I want to walk into a space already knowing that I have trust with someone. They know my shorthand, they know how I work, so that way I can focus on the show instead of like building this new relationship from the beginning. And I have done shows where that person has been new and it's challenging, but it works out. So I always start there. And then beyond that, I look at the needs of the show. If there's an opportunity that I can bring on someone who hasn't worked on Broadway before, who can fill that second position, I will. Or if there's someone who's PA'd a long time and not gotten a chance to assist, I'll try to bring someone in like that. Or someone maybe I've worked with, a while ago, and maybe they can come back around. So it really depends on the needs of the show. For like last 5 years, it's a smaller show. So I brought on someone who hadn't done a lot of assisting because we didn't need the experience in that way. I'm doing Cats in the spring, and I'm in the process of hiring now. And it's tricky with that show because it's not a crazy technical show, but I do think that the company is going to require a different type of care just because a lot of the company has not done a Broadway show before. And we're also asking, trans and non-binary and gender non-conforming people to step into a space that they traditionally haven't been in. So making sure that they have the tools that they need to do their gig while being in the container of Broadway. So I've been really looking for folks who can offer that care and can do the job as well. So I've been interviewing a lot of, and also thinking about the representation behind the table of people who aren't cis stage managers. So I've been interviewing a lot of trans and non-binary stage managers, a lot of which who I've never met, a lot of which who have not worked on Broadway. So trying to find space for them on the team so the cast can also feel that it's not just one-sided in terms of the diversity that we're trying to bring to the space. So again, I try to hire for the show, so whatever the specific show needs, also while fulfilling what I need in terms of like checking the boxes of the type of stage manager that I like to work with. So it varies. And I don't know if I answered your question completely, but that's sort of, the process for me at least.
Perfect. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And can you also talk about the process of replacing a PSM and maybe some challenges that can come with that?
Yeah, I am in the process of replacing myself on Ragtime currently.
Yes.
I replaced myself on Sweeney Todd. I am very fortunate in the shows that come to me, and typically I don't stay on shows long just because I enjoy putting them up and watching them flourish, and then I go and do something else. So that's kind of been my journey. Not to say that I won't stay on the show, but I guess, the process of replacing myself on Sweeney Todd with a new PSM, it is challenging because, you have a team structure, and sometimes the people inside of the team may want to bump up, or sometimes, you have to bring in someone who is similar in your leadership style to sort of, so the building can continue to run. And that's hard because no one's going to lead the way I do. No one's going to lead the way you do. And I think and also the company gets used to a certain type of leadership if you lead not the right way, if you lead a certain way. So it's always challenging to find the right energy to step in. I have people sometimes who go with the complete opposite, so you can shake the building up, so they're not having the pressure to like fill your shoes to feel like they're stepping into something. The challenge right now with replacing myself or replacing the PSM position at Ragtime right now is that Ragtime is such a interesting show in the way that it's structured, and the company is such a loving and giving company. The show is filled with trauma. The show deals with a lot of difficult themes, and we've been able to build a company of people who really lift each other up, and like the backstage culture is amazing, even with doing a show like Ragtime each night where we're saying a lot of words that are hard to hear, and where there's a lot of violence and all of that stuff. So finding the right person to come in to kind of keep the building at the level that it's at without like wanting to come in and be like, I'm the PSM, we're going to do it this way. And I don't fault people who want to do that because it's how some people lead. So finding a leader who is not that has been not the challenge, but what I've been looking for. So I guess those are the kind of things that I think about when I'm looking for someone to come in after me when I leave. And also making sure that the team dynamics remain the same. You don't want to bring in someone who has a storied past with another stage manager, because then that shifts the atmosphere. So I sort of consult with some of the other stage managers before, I make a decision, or before I take it to the director, just to make sure that they have a good relationship with these people. It's all about the relationships. If the interpersonal is funky, then the work's not going to be as good. If you can't come in and feel comfortable in a space, then you're not going to be able to do your best work. Yeah. So I try to weigh all of that. It's a lot of personality wrangling and a lot of skill matching, I would say.
It's a lot to think about.
It's a lot to think about, and I don't get paid extra for it.
No, you don't. All right, so in addition to stage managing live theater, your work is also extended into stage managing for TV, including productions like the VMAs, the Wiz Live, and of course the Tonys. What are some differences between stage managing for the stage versus for television?
Yeah, I will say I'm glad you brought that up, because when I first started, I remember people saying to me, like, you need to pick a lane, because if you start doing plays, then you're not gonna do musicals. If you only do musicals, you're not gonna do this. And I was like, well, that's silly. So then I was like, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. So I started doing circ, and then I did opera, and then I started doing the TV stuff, and it never once hindered the things that I do on Broadway. So it's such a myth for you to have to pick one thing to do and to stick with. And for me, I feel like it's made me a better leader and a better manager, just because I've been able to step into these new mediums and learn how to communicate differently and learn how to oversee certain projects of different scales. So I love that I've been able to do all of those other things. The big difference with working in television from theater is the scale, the pace, and I don't know how to say this in the easiest way. I guess because the pace is so fast with TV, especially when I'm doing the live televised musicals, tensions are higher, so people are like a little bit more on edge. Whereas in theater, we're used to things going wrong. We're used to like reacting on the fly. We're used to building a thing, and we do it nightly. It's live every night. But with TV, they're not used to doing that type of thing live every night, so people are always on edge. So that was just something that I had to learn. And that's a very general statement. Not everyone's like that, but a lot of people were. So that was very new to me, and I was always like, y'all, this is just, we're running the show. Like if it goes wrong, we're going to figure it out. But that's not how, they're not used to that. But I would say, like, at the core, stage management is the same, right? We're still looking out for safety. We're still making sure that people have the tools that they need. We're still facilitating certain things. We're still, making sure things are where they need to be and the cast is where they need to be. So once I realized that, when I stepped into TV, it was easy, because I was like, well, the tools are the same. It's just the language is different, The structure is different. Whereas, we rehearse, we tech, we preview, we open in theater. In TV, there is a rehearsal period, and then there's like a dry blocking period where you're on stage without cameras. And then there's camera blocking, which is essentially tech, and then you run the thing, and then it's live. So like, it's just a different way of structuring it, but it's sort of the same. As for the Tonys and the VMAs, that's a completely different beast, because it's, maybe 4 days of work, a week if you're the lead stage manager. And that's more coordinating the logistics of like flow and the technical things coming on and off. So that's more streamlined. One of the biggest differences as well is that you have more support in TV. There's more money, there's more people. So on the VMAs and the Tonys, I think there's like 20 stage managers. And for, the live shows like The Wiz and Jesus Christ Superstar and Annie and all of those, we started with 3 stage managers in rehearsal, and then once we got to set, we added like 10 people. Wow. So there's more people, there's more space to cover, so you have more support, and your job is like, you are in charge of this, as opposed to you are in charge of this. With theater, we're in charge of the whole thing, and with TV, depending on the role as a stage manager, you have like this thing to be thinking of. So there's less margin for error, I would say.
Okay. So as you said, you're currently working on Ragtime at Lincoln Center. I'm curious to know what drew you to Ragtime, and also, you talked about this a little already, but how you make decisions when it comes to picking projects, especially at this point in your career.
Yeah. This is my last time doing Ragtime. I can't do this show no more. I love it. It is beautiful. The music is amazing, but it's a lot. It's a lot. I did it the first time I saw it when I was in high school. They did like this all-state production of it. And it was beautiful. And I was like, wow, that's a lot for high schoolers to be doing.
Yeah.
Thinking back now, I'm like, they
It's
did
like,
that?
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was deep. So I saw it then, and then I saw the revival when it came back in whatever year that was. And so then I did it in 2019 in Texas. My family came and saw it. And my mom hates seeing theater that isn't fluff and fun. I took her to see The Color Purple when she was in town. She hated it. She's like, why'd you take me to see that sad-ass show? And I was like, I get it, girl. So she likes the Motowns and the Ain't Too Prouds, and, like, she loved freestyle. Anyway, right, this is my last time doing ragtime. It just requires so much out of me. It's also, there's just so much layered, and I have to disassociate in order to hear the words every day. I have to disassociate in order to call certain cues every day. And I understand the need for the show right now. I mean, there's such a deep need for the show right now, especially for people who've never seen it. It mirrors a lot of things that are happening in America last year, right now, a couple years ago. It's always timely, which is sad that the show always feels like it's relevant. So I understand the need for it. But for me, it's just a lot to take on. But to answer your question, the reason why I signed on for it was, I did it at City Center last year. And City Center is sort of like my New York City home. I do a lot of shows at Encores. I think I've done maybe 12 shows there now. And I just knew, first of all, it was going to be 2 weeks. I was like, it's 2 weeks, whatever. And I just knew it was going to be a moment. It hadn't been in New York in a long time. Lear is a director I work with a lot. And Joshua Henry's a good friend of mine. I've worked with him a lot. And I knew that it was just going to be a special moment. I love watching Joshua work. He's such a master at his craft. So I wanted to be back in the room with him creating this piece. So that was really the reason why I said yes to doing it at City Center. At the time, I did not know it was going to move to Broadway. But, excuse me, there were multiple times at City Center where we were all sitting there and we were like, this is wild. I remember calling the invited dress, and I was out front with the audience, and I had never felt the energy in a space like that. Like from the opening accord of the show, the audience erupted, and it was deafening. Just the applause. So people were just so excited to welcome Ragtime back to New York, and just like the energy of what that was. So I knew it was special. And I was like, there has to be something beyond this. I just didn't know, at the time. But anyway, so that was the reason why I said yes. It was the people, and it was just wanting to be a part of that moment. And then when it moved to Broadway, Lear and I had a lot of conversations about it, and I think because I had really made the show at City Center, I wanted to continue with it and see it forth. So those are the reasons why I said yes. I do love the music. It is challenging. So I wanted to kind of see it through and make sure that the folks coming into this space had what they needed to do a show like that. And then the reason, to answer your other question, what draws me to other shows are the people. Rarely I say yes to a show because of the show. I usually weigh who's on the team. I need to be working with people who I trust, people who I feel like values align with mine, people who I think are, really good at what they do, people who are nice. I ask all the time, when someone asks me about a show, I'm like, well, who's directing, who's choreographing, who's producing, who's designing, because all of those things matter. And then sometimes if there's someone on the team, even if it's the director who I don't align with and who I think may not be the nicest person, if there are other things that weigh, that tips the scale, then I'll do it, as long as I'm stepping into it knowing what I'm getting myself into. But 9 times out of 10, if it's a team of people who I don't respect or align with, I won't do it, because it's not worth it. I spend way too much time at the theater. I care way too much about what I do to step into a space to feel disrespected, or to step into a space where I'm seeing other people be disrespected. And it's more work on me to gain that respect, or to clock that person, or to do all of that, and it's not that deep, So I won't step into a space if I feel like it's going to be a lot of tension, or if it's going to be, mistreated.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. You used the phrase calling a show a few times. For anyone who might not know,
Oh, sure.
Can you talk about what calling a show is?
Calling a show is probably the most intricate part of our job. Anything that you see that changes on stage is triggered by a cue that we call. So all of the lighting shifts, all of the scenic shifts. If you see there's a turntable, anytime that moves, we're calling a cue to an operator to hit the button to make the thing move. If you see a scrim or a drop fly in, that's also us calling a cue for an operator to bring the thing in. And it's all timed to music or to count, so it's all very intricately placed with the action that's happening on stage. So to call a show, you really have to be dialed in, and you have to be paying attention and in the flow with the thing to make it happen. Calling a show is one of my favorite parts. I love creating it in tech when you're getting to figure out how things move and the timing of how things move. And, and that's the part that is the most, I won't say hard, but it's tricky because you're dealing with people's safety. If things are moving really quickly and people are dancing in and out of it, you have to time that out perfectly to where everything clears each other. So there's a lot of like Tetris in a way. So you have to be right A-brained to figure that out, and you also have to be patient and collaborative, working with the designers and the choreographers to make sure everything is what it is. But that's essentially what calling a show is. And there's one stage manager who does it. And at Ragtime, there's two of us who calls the show, so we rotate. I find it when you rotate calling the show, it keeps you fresh. If you're calling it every day, that's how you get complacent and you start to get a little bit more relaxed. So it's nice to have more people calling the show so you can kind of switch in and out.
Yeah, I've seen the videos of you calling shows on Instagram and whatnot, and they're incredible.
Oh my God.
And you look like you're having so much fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're so locked in and so focused. How do you maintain that focus?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've had people say this before, and like, I guess I'm not like the traditional stage manager because I am, what you see is what you get all the time. Like, I'm not mixing it up. I'm not about to show you a different version of me in different spaces. Like, this is Cody all the time, 24/7. So when I'm calling a show, especially, you're probably talking about the video from Olympika, when I love that music. And I was with that show for 7 years, so that music lived in me. So like, I'm dancing, I'm having a good time, and because calling a musical is musical, you have to call it on certain beats. Like, for me, getting into the groove and dancing with it allows me to kind of be in the pocket. So that's kind of what it is. Like, you have to be dialed in, but also like, I enjoy it. So it's a part of like, it's just a part of the way I do it. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know.
It's beautiful. It's a real talent.
Thanks.
Okay, pivoting a bit to your producing career. So you are a 2-time Tony-winning producer.
Ow.
Come on. Your first win was for A Strange Loop, which won Best Musical at the Tonys that year, and then again the following year for Parade, which won Best Revival. When you were starting out as a stage manager, did you ever imagine the Tonys being something you would one day aspire to?
Yes, but not in this way. I was like, I'm going to be the lead stage manager for the Tonys one day. And now I don't want to do that. I want to do other things. But like, your dreams shift, right? I think when I moved here, like, stage managing was the only thing I felt like I could do, or I felt like I had access to. And then over the years, as things, as doors open and as people came into my life, I realized that there were other avenues that I could also step into. Producing a show or co-producing a show and getting a Tony for it was not something that I actually dreamed of. It sort of just was a part of my path that sort of just opened up. But I think my dream in the beginning was to get like a special Tony for being a stage manager. I think there's only 2 stage managers in the history who's gotten them. It was Peter Lawrence and Beverly Jenkins. And I was like, that's going to be me one day. And then this happened, so I don't know what that journey is going to be anymore. But it wasn't something that I really aspired to.
Yeah, it's amazing. So in the spaces I've been in, another thing that I think people find really elusive is what exactly producers do and what their process is. So can you talk about your process as a producer and kind of what the day-to-day looks like when you're in that position?
Yeah, I mean, it's different because my relationship to both A Strange Loop and Parade was minimal in a sense because I was a co-producer. The lead producers are really the folks who have their boots on the ground and are dealing with the day-to-day and making sure that the machine is running. And as a co-producer, we sort of just offer support. We attend, marketing meetings. We have co-producer meetings where we sort of talk through the financials and we talk through where the show is heading. So I kind of had like a bird's eye view, but like a back seat to it, which is why I was able to do it on so many shows and stage manage, because PSMing is such a full-time job. So in order for me to co-produce or to produce, I can only really offer up so much time. So my day-to-day is really it's really free. You know, I check in on the shows. You know, we email back and forth, but I'm not necessarily in the theater in the same way as a lead producer is. So it gives me a little bit more freedom to be involved and to be keyed in and to offer some advice or notes or whatever the case may be without having the responsibility of the whole show being on my shoulders. So right now, for like with where I am in my journey with stage managing and all the other a million things that I do, is like that's like the easiest way and the best way for me to like step into that. So it's low. I wouldn't say it's low stakes, but it's less pressure.
Okay. So another one of the million things you do is you run a scholarship program.
I do.
In 2024, I was lucky enough to be part of the cohort,
Yes.
and it was honestly, very frankly, a life-changing program and very career-forming. So I'd love for you to talk about why you created the program.
I mean, that's why. You know, honestly, that's why. You know, I think there's a lot of times when I'm in the program and I'm like, oh, I'm not giving these students enough, or oh, like this is not doing enough. But then, you know, we have our wrap-up conversations, or I see you all connect in our meetings, or I see the things that you do outside of the program, and I'm like, that's why. You know, when I first moved here, I never saw anyone who looked like me doing the thing that I wanted to do. I didn't know there were other black stage managers until I met a few female black stage managers. And even then, I never saw anyone who looked like me doing the thing that I wanted to do. So I didn't really have something to aspire to other than the fact that I'm like, I want to do this thing. So I was able to sort of blaze my own path in a way. But without having a mentor that looked like me was sort of isolating, you know, and also being the only one in a room was isolating. And, you know, there were a lot of times where I dealt with, you know, crazy microaggressions. There's no one I can go to because I was the only one in the space. And when I would go to them, they didn't understand, you know. So being alone at the top of the career, being, you know, at the pinnacle of theater was hard in ways. So, you know, that was sort of the catalyst for starting the scholarship, was to give people the tools and the space that I didn't have when I was coming up. Originally, I was only going to, you know, sponsor one student at my alma mater. I was going to give them $1,500 and just, you know, be their mentor and kind of walk them through. But then the pandemic happened, and my friend was like, you never have an issue with dreaming big, so dream bigger. So then that's what kind of, you know, sparked what happened. And, you know, the first year, I think we gave people $1,500, or I think it was $1,500 or $4,000. It was a smaller amount than what people are getting now. We brought in 15 students, and we sort of figured it out. And it happened so quickly because we had this idea, and I was like, if it doesn't happen now, it's never going to happen. You know, how many ideas have you had, and then it took forever to make happen because of it's not the right time, you don't have the right resources or whatever, that, you know. So we just like went out on a limb, and we asked people for money, and luckily it was a pandemic, and everybody was looking for a place to put their money because they wanted to all of a sudden support black artists. And we raised a lot of money, and a lot of my fancy theater friends gave money, and we were able to provide this thing. And after the first year, it was so gratifying working with the students. I was like, this has to be something that is sustainable. So now we're, you know, going into our 6th year, and a lot of you all are here in New York and doing amazing things, and that's the thing that fulfills me. It's a passion project. It's hard to sustain, but like, you know, I ran into Moses, who was in the first cohort. He's now the associate director at Buena Vista Social Club. I ran into him at the Thanksgiving Day parade. So it's just amazing to, like, you know, that now y'all are my peers, which is so amazing to even say. So yeah, that's the reason and the reasons why I continue to offer it.
Yeah. How amazing is it that a passion project is changing kids' lives, like, literally everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, it truly is. And I think that, like, you know, we sort of talked about earlier how, you know, something I wrote years ago was like stepping into space and providing spaces for others. So that's kind of been the thing that I guess I've always done outside of the scholarship too. You know, even when I first started out, I think I'm an only child. I grew up, you know, not from much. So I think always making sure that like other people were around me was a big thing for me. So now that I'm in a position to offer that to people, is something that I try to do all the time. So with the scholarship, and also with, you know, my work and like bringing people on the stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So from everything you've shared today, it's clear to see that you are an incredibly passionate, knowledgeable, and very busy individual. So my question now is about work-life balance. A lot of people see stage management as an inflexible career just because of the time commitment of 8 shows a week. And stage managers are usually some of the first people in and some of the last people out. However, I saw that article that the New York Times wrote about you, where they basically followed you around for a week and shadowed you. You go from teaching at Columbia to producing to stage managing, sometimes 2 shows at once, and still having a full life outside of the work. How do you make it all happen, and what energizes you? I need some tips.
Well, listen, I ain't got a dog. I ain't got a man. I ain't got no kids. So what else am I gonna do? You know,
Fill the time.
I don't know. It's hard. I will say, like, it's a lot because, like, I was just on the phone talking to an actor who's sick. You know what I mean? Like, there's always something. And in this day and age, you're always accessible through social media, through text, through email. Like, people are expecting you to respond all the time at any moment. So I have to set boundaries for myself. I'm not a morning person, so I let everybody know that you're not going to hear from me before 10 a.m. And if you do, I schedule sent that shit. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, don't call me before 10 a.m. Don't ask me to do a meeting before 10 a.m. just because I need some time away from whatever it is. Yeah. So those are, like, so I set boundaries for myself in order to, like, maintain some sort of semblance of work-life balance. And in terms of just finding it outside of the work, you know, you just find pockets of time to do the things that refill your cup, you know. I take days off when I need to. I'm always on a vacation when I can. You know, I try to go eat with my friends and not talk about theater. But it is my life. I will, you know, I do this all the time. I do it a lot. You know, I'm going into double duty tomorrow with a workshop. Like, I'm always finding a new project that fulfills me or something that excites me, so I say yes to it. But it is time consuming. So in those moments when it's time consuming, you have to be fully invested in it. So when you're not in that, you find those pockets of time outside of it. You know, I'm also a Taurus, so I like to be horizontal. I like to be, you know, I like to chill and I like to not be rushed. So when I'm not working, I'm probably on my couch watching TV.
Real.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm either at a 10, like going, or I'm legit not doing a thing. And I don't know if that's healthy. I don't know, but it's kind of what sustains me. You know, so I just find pockets of time and I hang out with people who really pour into me and when I need it. And there are times where I feel like it's not sustainable. You know, doing ragtime, teching ragtime was one of the hardest things that I've done. And it wasn't because the show was so technical. You know, I've done Sweeney Todd was a bigger show. You know, I've done shows that are harder, but I think the content and the pressure of this show being a success because it was the first time it's been back on Broadway in so long, it was a hit at City Center, so it needs to be a hit there, so there's a lot of pressure coming from different avenues. It was a lot to manage, so, and the hours were a lot. You know, I would be in at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning to dry tech, which is essentially figuring out the technical sequences without the actors. Actors would come at noon, we would tech until 10 o'clock, sometimes 11, and then we would be in production meetings until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. When am I sleeping, right? Because I'm back the next day. No. So that is not sustainable, right? If you were to do that for an extended period of time, it's not sustainable. Luckily, we only teched and previewed for about a month, which is still a long period of time to be going like that. So there are moments when this job is not sustainable. So in those moments, you got to remember to drink your water. You got to remember to eat, which sometimes I don't. So you surround yourself with people to remind you to do that. So when you're out of it, you can be a little bit more free and you can breathe and do the other things. So when people talk about how stage management is such a hard job and how it's not sustainable, they're probably speaking to a lot of that because it's real. Like, there are moments when all we do is come to the theater and have to, 5, 6, 7, 8, make it happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I find pockets of time to breathe. I go for walks, not so much now because it's cold, but
very cold.
But I try to find those moments.
Amazing. Okay. And so for my last question, what is some advice you'd like to offer any young or new stage managers or producers who are trying to break into the industry right now?
I don't know. I feel like every time I answer this question, I change it up. I think today what's on my heart is to just say that, like, you belong. If I did it, you can do it. If you're doing it, they can do it. I think that there's space for all of us. So I think to really dig into the abundance of life, speak what you want, and then go after it. What's the Ariana Grande song, the manifestation song? I call it the manifestation song. When she's like, I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it. Literally, that's been my entire life. Like, I've manifested almost everything that has happened for me. Yeah. And it's true. Like, if something that I want, I'm going to work towards getting. I'm going to say it out loud, and then I'm going to try to make that thing happen. And it might not be that specific thing, but something next to it has happened because I've been speaking it into existence.
Yeah.
So I think those would be the things that I would say. Know that you belong and to really ask for what you want. You know, I think people don't want to be cringe anymore. They don't want to ask people for things.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask me for something, how do I know that you want it?
Yeah.
You know, so I really think it's important to put yourself out there, do the work, and really know that, you know, you have what it takes to do it.
Perfect. All
Yeah.
right. That's all we've got for you.
All right.
Thank you so
Of
much for being here,
course, of
Cody.
course.
Amazing. Cody Renard Richard, everyone.
Yes!